Hey everybody, and welcome to As the World Works. I can't tell you how excited I am about my glasses fogging up today, but more excited to have the honor of having a guy that has been not only instrumental in my life, but was besides my agent, Mary Collins, the first guy to give me an opportunity to do episodic television. And I'm forever grateful for that. Let me give you a little background on this guy before I give you his name, the big reveal. In the 50s, he started as a script supervisor for films such as The Old Man and the Sea, Mutiny on the Bounty, How the West Was Won, and Paper Chase, and I could go on and on down the list. And somewhere in the mid-70s, he started directing a little show you guys may have heard of called Dallas, where he also set the record for the most episodes, 300, filmed by one director. Goes on to do Walker, Texas Ranger, a host of other TV shows, as well as films. And we're going to talk about all that in a minute, but talk about a legend and an icon in the industry. So if you're in the film business, if you're just in life in general and enjoy entertainment, and those that you don't necessarily get to see who direct these things and make them come to life, this guy, Michael Preece, is that guy. And I'm so honored to have you here today, Michael.
Well, thanks, Sam. Happy to be here.
Look at you. I think you live somewhere in Southern California. It looks like you've got some really cool background going on there in San Francisco.
Yeah. That's actually where I started directing, was in a series called Streets of San Francisco with Michael Douglas and Carl Malden.
How about that?
Very beginning, in 1975.
1975, that was your first show to direct.
Yes, an episode.
And then, you also have a beautiful family. Met your wife, rest in peace. And your daughter Gretchen's son or husband is someone that you guys all may know as well, is a songwriter and has done many scores. Max, I told him the other day that he did Toy Story.
Yeah, he did The Natural.
Randy Newman.
The Natural. I mean, he's done all kinds of things. So it's kind of in your family, but you are a one of a kind that has had this breadth of experience for since you graduated high school in Los Angeles.
Yes, I did. I grew up in Los Angeles.
You grew up in LA, and just a little sidebar. When did you get into fitness? Because I know you worked with some of those guys.
I ran track in high school. I remember I went to a private school up through the 9th grade. And one day I was doing, there was a half miler named Mel, what was his name? Mel something. And he lifted weights. So I was in the 9th grade and I was doing push-ups, and the coach said, "Don't do that. You'll make yourself muscle bound." And I said, "Well, I want to be muscle bound." It was a bad term in those days, but so I started doing push-ups, and then when I had a school teacher in the 10th grade who was a yoga instructor as a sideline besides his coaching, and so he could hold up 2 buckets. He was an agriculture teacher. It was an easy class, and he would hold up 2 buckets of water and give us a lecture about exercise being important in everything. And what he wanted us to do was turn over dirt with a spade. And so I got kind of into that. He got me started thinking about eating properly. And then later on, I just got into going to the gym. I started going to a place called Vic Tanny's, which was Vic Tanny was in Los Angeles anyway, had gyms everywhere. And I just kept it up to this day. I don't do what I used to do, but I wish I could.
You look great. You met actually.
I feel good.
Yeah, you met my dad, who
Oh,
turns
yeah.
88. He's 88.
We hit it off immediately, your dad and I. Yeah.
at the gym, and he's does the same thing. You look great. You look super fit. And the last time we ran into each other a few years ago in California, you were working out with some of these. I don't know if they were MMA guys or what, but they were super ferocious
Yeah.
athletes.
Well,
And,
I was lucky enough. I did an episode of Streets of San Francisco about a bodybuilder who accidentally killed a girl because she made fun of him. And we ended up, it was interesting, the Quinn Martin Productions, and Quinn Martin wanted an actor to play the part. And I said, you really can't have an actor play a bodybuilder because they just are a different breed. So I convinced him. It's the only time I think I was ever tried to convince Quinn Martin of anything, that we hired Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he had done, a couple of documentaries and something he had done, but he really had never acted as a episodic or any kind of film acting. And he did well. He did, all things considered. A girl named Diana Muldaur was the leading lady. And they had supposedly a little romance in the show. It's kind of fun. And so I got to know Arnold, and consequently we had every major bodybuilder in California in the show. So I got to know them, Roger Callard and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And anyway, they all came to San Francisco to perform in the episode. That was
and
fun.
didn't you go do an Italian film with Lou Ferrigno or one of those guys?
No, it was actually Franco Columbu.
Franco Columbu, yes.
Yeah, and he and Arnold did a cameo in the movie. We shot it in Sardinia, in a little town, and it was called Beretta's Island. And we did an opening of the show. I don't know how it fit in because I forget the movie. It was very forgettable. I often argue with my son-in-law, Randy, about who's made the worst movies, and I consider it probably the worst movie ever made, but there's arguments about that.
It wasn't the way it was directed, though. It was.
No. Oh God, I know. I was. I tried very hard, but it just. We shot in a little tiny town in Sardinia.
Yeah. And it's probably the wine and espresso. I'm sure it's just too beautiful a place to.
And a budget of $50.
Well, yeah. Speaking of some of these epic films that you got in script supervising, right?
Right.
Out of high school. Your mom was a first business agent, right?
My mom and two other ladies, we lived next door to a woman who was a script girl. In the original, and way back in the early 30s, a director would bring his secretary to the set and to keep track of things, make sure that, if somebody had a glass of wine in their right hand or a cigarette or whatever they were propped, that it would match, continuity. And so he would have her keep notes. And then, some directors came in and didn't have a secretary, so they needed someone. Usually it was a woman. But then as they started making some movies that required, like a submarine movie, they wouldn't want a woman on necessarily at that time. Now they would. But they would hire a man. And I got in, luckily, through my mom, she and two other women organized the Guild in 1936, actually the year I was born. And my mother worked out of our home, and it became bigger and bigger, and then it became a union. It went from a small guild, and I don't know, somewhere in the 70s, I believe it got into a union, a local of the IA, which is the International Stage Employees Union.
Interesting. So did she have some influence on your?
Oh yeah, very much so. She got me my first job on a movie, second unit or she got me trained. She was instrumental in hiring or I went on the set for 2 weeks. Should have been months, but I had 2 weeks, and there was a second unit going to Clayton, Georgia, on a Disney movie called The Great Locomotive Chase with Fess Parker. And so I went to Clayton, Georgia. I was a kid, like 19, and I was in college, but I decided it was during the summer, and I said, well, when I get back in September, I'll go back to college. And then September came, and there was another movie. So that was it. So.
And then you were off to the races.
I don't advise that, by the way.
That right out of college, just go jump on the script supervision train and end up where, I mean, no one has a script, right? You can't duplicate that life story. You can't say, 1955, now you've done, thousands of movies and directed, and, your life has certainly been a self-made guy, right?
I think a lot of it was I had to work. I had children and a family to support. So I think that's a good drive.
Did you when was it that you sort of shipped off to a remote location? Was as a script supervisor, like remote outside of the state? When was your first time to was it Mutiny on the Bounty where you guys went?
Well, I worked at MGM, and I did a couple of movies. The first one I did over there was called Subterraneans. Well, at that time, they were an expensive movie. They were $1 million. And it had George Papard and Leslie Caron in it. I guess young people don't know who they are, but anyway, they were movie stars. And then I did a few movies, and now the Mutiny on the Bounty was coming up to go to Tahiti, and it was going to be a big movie. So at the time, it was the biggest movie ever made, and I was assigned to it. So I spent 2 years of my life working on it. We spent 9 months in Tahiti, 2 trips of 4.5 months each. Came back, they fired the director, which was kind of interesting because I said, when we came back from the first one, I said, I'm going to get fired because this is a British director and he wanted a woman to do the job and they're going to get rid of me. So I went to work. I came into work one Monday morning and I didn't even get to the gate, and somebody came out and said, oh, they fired the director. So I said, well, one of us had to go. So I guess, but
what was Tahiti like? Do you have a good time over there?
It was, it sounds like the ideal place to work, but we were at sea most every day. All we used was Tahiti as the ocean, and and it was hot. I don't think I wore shoes the entire filming down there, and we shot on land a little bit, off and on. And then, it was famous for their Tahitian girls, very pretty. And they had no, I wouldn't say morals. They did have morals. They had, but free love. And so you get a lot of people coming into Tahiti, guys especially, looking for these pretty girls. And we had them everywhere on the set because they were attracted also by the leading man who loved Tahiti, Marlon Brando. So,
how was that working with Marlon?
Well, as a director, I think I would have hated it, but as a script supervisor, I loved it because he's very funny, very sarcastic, and hated authority. So it was fine as a script guy on the set because I thought it was funny when he would make fun of the director. But then if I had been directing, I probably wouldn't have liked him or appreciated his spending all the money, wasting money, which
because film wasn't cheap, right? I mean, you're rolling through.
Yeah, they had the 65 millimeter film, and he would wait till he didn't want other actors in this, to be like off stage, so we'd have to wait, and he would do it, till the ship was in the right sun, and then he would do a take, and he'd say stop, and then the sun would change, or the ship would change, and then we'd have to start all over and take the ship and maybe go a mile around. And then by that time it was too late. Well, we have to go home and start tomorrow again. At one time, we were 365 days behind schedule. They had a 65-day schedule, and we had shot 365. No, we had shot 400 and some odd, and they said we were 301 year behind schedule, through whatever amount of days in a year.
What was that? Why?
Well, weather. At one time, we were in Tahiti. We had 16 consecutive days of rain, and we couldn't film anything. So they had us, because we all lived in different places around the island, and they'd have us report to this bar, which seemed very good, at 8 o'clock in the morning to report. And then it would be raining. They'd say, well, come back at noon. So we'd go back at noon, and then they'd say it was still raining. So they said, go home, but come back tomorrow morning at 8 to see if it's raining. And then it did rain for 16 days, and they pulled the plug in Tahiti. We moved back to the studios in Culver City and did some interiors. That's when they fired the director. It was interesting. The first director was Sir Carol Reed, who had a wonderful reputation and a great director, but not for that movie. And then they hired a guy who directed All Quiet on the Western Front, Louis Milestone, who was, he sounds young now to me, but he was old at the time. He was actually 62. What seemed to me at the time, I said, my God, he can't even get around. And now, of course, that sounds like a child.
Yeah. Then you go, not to speed through this, but there's so many things you've done. You go back on the water with The Old Man and the Sea, right?
Well, we did that off Cuban waters, and we could have shot that. Well, in the Gulf of Mexico, we could have shot it in Malibu. All we did, my part of it, I was on the second unit, and we shot water, basically. They were called process plates, so that they later, when he's in his little boat catching the fish and everything, they would have a screen behind him with the water.
Interesting.
Behind. But we had to wait days for overcast weather, and then we'd want rain sometime. So I was there for quite a while in
so
Cuba.
When you're script supervising water,
Mm-hmm.
do you give direction, or are you just waiting for the tide?
And you talk a tedious job. My job was to measure how high the lens was off the water.
Wow.
And I had a tape measure, or yardstick, I believe at the time. They hadn't invented tape measure yet. And then write down, the guy would say, we have a 50 millimeter lens. I'd write that on a piece of paper. That's all I did, was write down information, put it in a notebook, and then turn it over to somebody when we came back to Hollywood.
Wow. So
the only thing I learned at all was never to mix rum and Coca-Cola.
What happens?
Well, one night I was pretty young again, and I went into a bar at the hotel, and there were two old guys there, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm on the second unit." And they said, "Oh, we'll buy you a drink. Have a Cuba Libre." Isn't that what they call them, I believe? And I had one, and it was rum and Coke. And I had two. And then I went up to my room and threw up. And I've never I have tasted Coke, but I've never had another rum and Coke.
To all the filmmakers out there, that's really sage advice.
It really
Let me ask you, so propelled forward, and then how do you go from you know, second unit to first unit and then directing? I mean, it's
But,
obviously 20 years of that script supervision and that experience, you know, led to um, understanding more about directing and talent, because you've seen thousands at that point, right?
I, through other people's advice and my own, just thinking, doing features, unless you're a writer, you're never going to get a break as a director. Television, um, uh, they can promote people. And I had worked on Hawaii Five-0 for a couple of years, and I thought I was going to get a break there to direct, but it didn't happen. And so I got an offer to work on for Quinn Martin, which I had done a few times, but I did this was on Streets of San Francisco. And I went up there and Carl Malden and Michael Douglas, I got along very well with them. And there was a director who did not want to get in the car when Carl Malden and Michael Douglas would do running shots or driving shots. And they would put up 3 cameras, one on the hood and one on each side. And then the director would have to lie in the back seat and the mixer would be in the trunk. This one director said, I won't get back there. So they put me in there and I would get into the car with my script and a slate and do all that stuff. And then we'd be driving along and Michael would say a line or two and then Carl would say a line and I'd say, well, try that again. I think you guys could do it better. So they would do it again. And then we get back and the director would say, how'd it go? And I said, I got everything. It's all done. And we'd be gone maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And, you know, they would hear my voice in dailies directing. And then one day after the second year, Quinn Martin came to San Francisco to say hello to our company. No one ever saw Quinn come on sets. He seldom did. And he came up there in a limo with a guy named John Wilder, and he said hello to everybody. And I got up nerve enough. I went over to his limo. He rolled down the window as he was leaving. And I said, Quinn, he said, don't ask, I know what you want. And about the next day, a list of the future directors came out and I was 2 weeks away. I was starting directing.
Wow.
And then later he told me, he said, you know, directors are a dime a dozen, but a good script supervisor are hard to find. So he hated to lose me as a script supervisor, but and because of him, Michael Douglas was dating a girl, an actress, Brenda Vaccaro, and she had a series at Universal. And I went over there and directed an episode for her, just her for, you know, she was doing me a favor, and because of them. And I got paid. Was put under contract at Universal. Their options, not mine. And I directed every second unit and clean up people. A director would get sick and, you know, at lunchtime, and I would have to go in and finish a day's work. So I was bouncing around doing all kinds of shows.
So then along comes Dallas.
Yep. Well, I got a quick story about that. I was working for Quinn Martin on a series called The Runaways. And the producer of Dallas called me and he said, I have a new series. I'd like you to direct it. And I said, what's it about? He said, some oil people in Texas and soap opera. And, you know, it's hopefully it's going to be a continuing thing. We didn't know. They hadn't really done it. I said, you know, his name was Leonard Katzman. I said, Lenny, I've got a great series. I've got a hit series here. I'm going to stay with it because it's about runaway people and we're doing kids, grandmas, wives, husbands, everybody who runs away. We can track them down. It's going to be a hit series. I think we made 11. And so the first year I didn't do Dallas. And then Lenny said, well, your hit series, maybe do you want to try coming on Dallas and doing one episode?
So then you did the one episode?
Yeah. Yeah.
plus a few more.
Yeah, I should have believed him in the first place.
I didn't realize that you had everybody shoot in the cast, so no one knew who actually shot JR.
Yeah, we
That
had
was
everyone, even everybody. I went up there and took the gun. I said, "You son of a bitch!" Bam, bam, bam. I didn't even have a. I think I had a gun, but I didn't have any blanks. I just went bam, bam, bam.
yeah.
Bang, bang, bang. Yeah. No, we and it was I didn't know who shot JR. I mean, it really the only two people were the editor, as far as I know, the editor and Leonard Katzman. Yeah.
And then it was just this big, moment. I think half the nation watched it, half the world, right?
Oh, I've had experiences where people said, "Oh, I never watched Dallas," and then pretty soon they're telling you how much they hated, one of the characters, and he should, obviously, I'm saying I thought you said you never watched Dallas, and you're telling me that Cliff Barnes should never have said,
So a few years later, along comes Walker, where we meet, and you were you back in Dallas, or had you traversed back to LA at that point?
I had there was a series called Dangerous Curves. I had gone back to Dallas. It was a short-lived drama, hour shows late at night. It was called Prime Time. No, Crime Time after Prime Time, and but it didn't work. And then they were shooting Walker, Texas Ranger, and one of the actresses, Cherie Wilson, had gotten the part as a DA on Walker, and she knew me from Dallas. And I guess they got behind schedule a couple of times, and the shows they were having to do retakes, and she said, if you had Michael here, we wouldn't be doing this, we wouldn't be working these long hours. So Chuck Norris, they said, yeah, and they gave me one episode. And it was interesting. At lunch of the first day, Chuck says, I want you to do every other episode. And I said, wait a minute, shouldn't you see dailies or something? Or he said, no, I said, I make the decisions. And so I did, a lot of them. I did 88 of them, I think.
What I appreciated working with you was not only that it was a quick audition, you knew what you wanted, but also on the takes, it wasn't cumbersome. You saw what you wanted, you got what you wanted, and then we moved on. You didn't beat it down. Have you ever as a script supervisor, do you remember working with guys who would just beat the crap out of a scene?
Well, one of the things was with young actors, they would come in and read, and they would be very good. And you'd say, yeah, that's exactly what we want. Just do that when, you got it down. And then they would go home and they'd go to their acting teacher, and the acting teacher would then improve upon that so much. And they would come back another day, and sure enough, I'd say, where did that come from? First of all, why are you using that stupid accent? Things like that. But I remember, I do remember every day you worked.
Wow.
I remember you don't look much different to me now. The hair, but other than that, you were really a good young actor, I must say. I remember.
Thank you. That means the world. I don't know what else to say. I think we're done.
But I remember one episode you did where you guys were horrible, a rich kid gang, and you guys were horrible. And you had such a nice thing that you didn't. I think you played the guy that was reluctant to be.
It's always
bad.
the guy with the conscience.
Yeah, with a little bit of.
Yeah. Mean Streets. That was really bad, beating up homeless people and getting the jollies out of it. That was crazy, videotaping it.
Yeah, it wasn't. We had somebody that was really a well-known actress as one of the old homeless ladies. She had been like in MASH or something. Or not Helen Burstyn, but somebody like that. What the hell, Burstyn? I wish it had been.
Yeah.
We'll look it up on Google it.
Makeup was done so well. You
Yeah.
couldn't tell she was so good.
Mhm.
And then what was the guy that Whitman? No, horse guy, big horse guy, horse ranch up in California. He came down for one of the episodes. I just had a bit part in that one.
Well, which one was that? This,
Which episode?
yeah,
We were at
sports
the
guy.
airport. He was a horse guy.
Oh, horse guy. Oh,
Famous Western guy, been around.
oh, I know who you mean. Yeah, you lived in Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
Oh God, movie star kind of guy.
yeah. It was Whitman. Whitman.
Well,
No,
Stuart Whitman. Yeah, Stuart
Stuart.
Whitman. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The richest. He started buying land just up north of us here in Santa Barbara, and he at the
yeah,
right time he was buying it for like $100 an acre, and some of it was right on the ocean. So he ended up owning thousands of acres of land that at the time was very cheap. And then I'm sure it wasn't 100 an acre, but it was cheap. And so he he didn't need to work. He just liked to work. He was a good guy.
yeah. You
That's
could.
right. You were in that episode. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. There were so many people who came out of that show that
Yeah.
I've seen in big roles. You know, they
Yeah.
were getting their start, and as well as Dallas. So then we did a little deal, Sons of Thunder, for like
Yes.
a minute. It was kind of a spinoff.
Yeah.
And then you went on to do some film, right? After that, you did some film
Yeah.
work.
Yes.
And what was the one you did with Chuck, sort of late 90s? It was a made-for-TV movie.
With Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they were called. There were three of them. There were 2-hour movies of the week.
That's it.
Made movies of the week, and I can't remember. One of them was a spin-off with a guy. Oh God, what's his name? He very handsome, and he had a party. His thing. He was in a big movie where he gave a famous actress a massage. He was a massage therapist, and people saw him in that, and that's how he got his start. Oh my God. Anyway, sorry about that. Senior moment here. I can't think of his name. He played a spinoff, and then we did one where a young guy was going to take over as head of the Texas Rangers and replace Walker. And we did a couple of those. In fact, I have a movie on. I have a trophy for a week. I won an award for movie of the week for that. Nice. Thing.
What's the this is a total sidebar, but a few years ago, I was telling you several years ago that I was doing more voiceover than anything, and you mentioned a friend of yours that, you know, the way technology is, anybody can be a voice actor.
Yeah.
Anybody can be a producer, a director, and the things like that. So I think he saw the tide flowing and moved to Iceland.
He is the most talented guy I've ever known in my life. My son-in-law did a play. I'll tell you, his name will come to me in a second. Did a play, and he did every voice and sang every song. And later, when they did the play and everything, he got, famous people to sing the song. His name's Nick Jameson. Sorry, Nick Jameson's his name. And he now still does that. He plays in a band and has a comedy routine, but he does voiceovers in Iceland for here. And the thing that I got him one time, an actor had gone somewhere and we couldn't get hold of him. We had thing, and I said, get this guy, he will imitate him. He only had like a couple of lines. They brought him into the studio. I'm not even sure they brought him in, but he heard the guy's voice a few times and he could do it. Marvelous.
Just that.
Nick Jameson. Sorry, God, Nick.
Yeah, but he just said, I'm done with kind of this whole, you know.
He he was living in Topanga Canyon, and then he got kind of like tired of going on interviews, and he just packed up one day and moved to Iceland.
Just like that.
He loves it there, and he's not. Apparently Iceland's misnamed. I've never been there. Have you?
No, it's green, and Iceland's
Yeah.
the opposite.
And Greenland's icy, and Iceland's green.
Yeah. I hear it's a great place. That would be fun to move somewhere with talent like that. Just be able to go around the world wherever you want to land. So you, I know everybody would want to know this, and this sounds so cliche, but starting in the beginning as a scriptwriter, if you could ramble through a script supervisor to directing some of the more inspiring or interesting actors you've worked with, and why? What's really stepped out?
I would say the most interesting all around has to be Marlon Brando. And then I thought, it's like I always like people who are slightly off, a little off, as far as, and I really enjoyed working with Richard Dean Anderson on MacGyver. I did a lot of episodes of MacGyver up in Vancouver, and he was a great guy to hang out with. Friday nights, because we shot 5 days a week, Friday nights was his night because he wouldn't drink, he'd work out, and all of a sudden Friday night was, he could go out, and then he found out he couldn't stay out past 10:30. He would say, "Oh, we're going out drinking and whatever," and then at 9:30 he'd be falling asleep in the restaurant. But he was a wonderful actor. Robert Mitchum, I thought, was, because he knew everybody's dialogue and he was articulate as far as, he never missed a line. And I've worked with a lot of, at that time, well-known. He was even though he smoked a lot of pot, he would, one morning I was riding to work with him, and he's in the back seat, I'm in the passenger front seat, and he lights his pipe and he said, "Here, you want some?" And he handed it forward, and I said, no, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, for one thing. And the director was a guy named Henry Hathaway, who was a reputation for being mean. He's the one that did How the West Was Won. And this was a movie in Mexico called Five Card Stud with Mitchum and Dean Martin, and who was a great man too. Dean Martin was very funny. And anyway, Mitchum still never blew a line, and neither did Charlton Heston. One time he bet me $5 that they would not have to do 2 takes over on the whole movie. This was a big movie. It was because of him. He said, "I hit my marks and say my lines." And he bet $5, which wasn't much. And the director was a guy named Tom Grice, and he never had to do a takeover because of Heston. He was good.
Because
then I think I really enjoyed working with Spencer Tracy, to go way back. That was The Old Man in the Sea, except that I was 19 and he was an older man. I don't think he paid much attention to me outside of giving me that rum and Coke. But
was Brando, is that the truth that he would improvise a lot? And and as far as learning dialogue or learning lines and things like that, it was just kind of on his own?
Well, he had lines written everywhere, including on other actors' foreheads. And one day he was doing a scene, and I had written his lines out on a piece of paper. And he was looking down, and it was on a picture called Morituri with Yul Brynner. And he's looking down at this script, and he's looking around, and he says, and right in the middle of acting, he says, "Preece, I can't read your fucking writing." I had written the lines out for him. And that was, right. But he said it in the same voice, like he was reading a line.
So it just kept going.
He just kept going. Preece, I can't read your fucking writing. And then so they said cut. And I printed it out more clearly. I thought it
Yeah.
was clear at the
You're like,
time.
so what kind of films or what kind of directors what directors have you
Well,
admired too?
I think I learned more from bad directors, but the one who I really enjoyed being around, even though he was not nice to everybody, he was always nice to me, was Sam Peckinpah. I really enjoyed him. He didn't direct actors. I used to go up to an actor because he'd go up and talk to him about something, and I said, "What does he talk? What did he ask you or tell you?" Because I was thinking he was, I'd learned something of, an inspiration. And he said, "Well, it had nothing to do with the scene. It was like, look at that girl's breasts over there, or something. That's the way they were. Roy Jensen and Peckinpah and Steve McQueen. They never talked about the scene. They always because, but as far as directors who influenced me, I think Hathaway, a guy named James Bridges, because he let the actors. He thought he hired, and that's my theory too. If you hire the right actors, you don't have to direct them. And I mean, only dogs and little children do you get to really direct.
And don't let them go to a coach after you've cast them.
Yeah, especially if they're good, or if you want it, and don't do an accent. Don't surprise you with an accent. A guy, a guy, because how Dallas, especially Dallas or Walker, nobody in Texas has the same accent. I mean, you can be from Abilene and you speak one way, and most people in Dallas have no accent at all. New York,
right?
So,
yeah.
when you see a guy in with a cowboy hat on in Dallas, you say, "What part of New York are you from?"
What did you like most about living in Dallas?
Getting on the freeway. They used to be so polite. When I first went there, people would you'd be going up an on ramp, and they would slow down to let you go ahead. And I was coming from Los Angeles, where they'll play with you, say you can't get on the freeway. I think that may have changed a little bit in Dallas, but I don't know. I got to feel at home there. I loved the food. I lived. Again, I was living on per diem, and that's the nicest thing about any city. And I got to know Dallas really well. I stayed the first year or so. I stayed in a hotel, the Stoneleigh Hotel. Then I bought a house there and put a swimming pool in my house and had a very good life. I brought my dogs down, and we kept a house here in Malibu, but my wife would come down to visit off and on.
So what is it about what do you love? I mean, that's a sort of a rhetorical question, but about being on the set and working.
It's the fastest time that ever goes by. The difference when you're a script supervisor and you're sitting there and you're waiting for time to go by, and they're going to do it again, and I got to write more stuff down. And then the directing, I mean, you can't believe, oh my God, it's 4:00 already. How did it get there? And why do we have to break for lunch? Because I really love being there, and I love being sort of the boss for those hours, and working with Chuck Norris was really good because I saw him go from what we considered a personality. He was Chuck Norris, but then he became, I thought after a few years, he became understanding acting. And I thought he became good. I don't know whether everyone would think that, but I thought he became quite a good actor, and especially because Chuck's not an emotional kind of person, but he was able to just play that on as an actor, and especially in a few shows. I mean, rather than just fighting with people, which is what the series was about, beating up big guys.
You and I have talked about Westerns before and sort of both of our affinity for them. What's your dream project?
A Western shot
There you have it.
shot in shot in either around Arizona or Santa Fe, New Mexico, that area up there. I mean, I worked on How the West Was Won. I worked on Cimarron and True Grit and some movies like that. And I just love the atmosphere of a Western.
Spaghetti Westerns, John Wayne, you worked with those guys?
Yeah, I worked on True Grit. Yeah.
True Grit. Wow.
Yeah. And
What was the Duke like?
well, unfortunately, during that time, he had to have a bag because and he was in a bad mood the whole time. But he was, I mean, he was a formidable guy, big, good, and he was a character. I mean, he was one of a kind. I mean, there was no doubt about it that he was a man and he could do everything. He could ride a horse, he could shoot. He knew you didn't fool him, and yeah, I mean, he was a lot of people didn't like his politics. I don't know in today's world what that would happen, but he let it be known who he liked and who he didn't like.
Well said.
I mean, today he'd probably be called a racist, but he was just being honest. He was married to a Mexican girl, but we were shooting in Mexico on one movie, and he was like talking about Mexicans. And he said, and somebody said, "Your wife's Mexican." Well, she's different. You know, I mean, he was very funny about it. Your kids are, you know. Anyway, I was very, very fortunate and happy that I got to work with him.
Yeah, let's do a Western in Arizona or something like that soon. My buddy Julio Cedillo, I think you know Julio.
Yeah.
Worked with him before. He did Cowboys versus Aliens.
The what?
Cowboys versus Aliens.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. We talked about that before. Yeah.
Who does that? You know what I mean? And they pulled it off in some miraculous way. But it'd be cool to do a purist show. Didn't you do? It was in the early '90s, kind of a spin-off of the film. It wasn't the Young Riders, but it was a Western that you guys.
I did the Young Riders. It was a thing with Josh Brolin. Was one of them, and a bunch of them. We shot it in Tucson. It was Young Riders was about the Pony Express. And I love that working in. I think that the young people got to the point where there was, without the cell phone or without texting and all that stuff, you get the feeling, well, I've got to go tell him right now. I mean, you could build up drama so easy with now. Well, just call him and tell him that the bad guys are 2 blocks away. And there, you had to get on a horse and ride and go take a shortcut and up. I mean, much fun. And I admire guys who can really ride. We had a wrangler on a show, Lazarus Man, which was I loved that show. Did you ever hear about it? It was a show about rising from Lazarus rising from the dead, and we shot it in Santa Fe, which is a great area to shoot westerns in. And I forget my point now, but I just love him.
He's a great horse rider. He's a wrangler. This guy.
And so you like horses, right?
Love horses. Yeah. Yeah, we used to have a ranch in Colorado when I was a kid. It's a totally different place now than it was then. 70s it was more, pioneer, pristine. Didn't have the glam glitz thing going on, which is, it is what it is, but not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what I did have one more question about directors. You've acted?
Yep. Yep. Yes, I would do, when I was starting out, Brando said to me one day, so you want to be a director? I said, yeah. He said, go to acting school. So I started going to acting school, and I would do offstage dialogue as a script person. You're reading, other people's parts all the time, because they'll send an actor home, or it's a phone call or whatever. And so that's part of your job. And so I got to pretend to act. And then when I was on I Spy years ago, they were doing a test, and I got them to give me a screen test, and I got into the Screen Actors Guild, and so because to make a little extra money, and I could do stunts on I Spy because we were in a foreign country and they need somebody to get shot and fall down. I could do that, and yeah. So then there was a time when I was at a Laker basketball game. I ran into a guy who was producing Gilligan's Island, and I was in pretty good shape. And he said, "You want to play a native?" I said, "Sure." So he got me on Gilligan's Island. I did three whole days on it. Played a part of a native with a little bit of dialogue, but it was gibberish dialogue. He said, "Just say, make up anything."
What'd you say?
But they put me in I put body makeup on. I had a big thing in my nose and a wig, and it was really ugly. And I scared myself. I walked by a makeup mirror and I said, "Oh my God, I hardly." And I had Tina Louise. Remember Gilligan's Island?
Yeah, sure.
Tina Louise. I was supposed to hold her by the arm, and so I went up and we were rehearsing, and I touched her arm. She says, "Please don't touch me unless we're shooting." And I said, hurt my feelings, And but then I realized what I looked like, and I wouldn't want to be touched by me either.
What did you say? What was your gibberish? Do you remember?
Oh God, I'm gonna go boy, go, yeah, well, that kind of stuff.
I saw that one. Have you seen it since?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I would love to see that.
But you couldn't say the same thing twice. Like a different angle. Well,
Sure.
say that thing again. I said, I don't know what I said. Didn't you write it down?
Need a playback. Oh my gosh.
I'm glad we don't have to loop it.
What about comedies?
Well, I did. I had never done any comedy, and then I met Tim Conway. I did a movie with Tim Conway called The Prize Fighter. We went down to Georgia and shot it, and I got along with Tim. And then there was he got another series called Ace Crawford, and I did. We only did, I think, 6 episodes, and I did all 6 of them. So I got into comedy, and then we did a pilot, and Dick Van Dyke was in it, and Dick Van Dyke backed out at the last moment, and we had ended up with Tim Conway again because of we recommended him, and it didn't sell. But I got a letter. I didn't frame it, but I have a letter from the president of CBS that it was the best comedy pilot, but right now we're not doing comedy. CBS is not doing any new comedies, but thank you for doing a great job. It was from the president of CBS. I think I still have it somewhere. I don't know where.
Who did he get with on Carol Burnett's show? And they would just crack each other up. Am I thinking of?
He was that one, the famous one where he's with Harvey Korman, and they do the dentist, and he shoots himself accidentally with the hypodermic, or not hypodermic. Yeah.
Did you ever see them together? Actually,
Well,
or did he ever tell you?
I've been with both of them. Unfortunately, they're both gone now. But yeah. I've actually had several dinners, lunches with both of them, and it's Tim who instigates it all. Harvey was great. I mean, I loved him in a picture. I don't know, with Cloris Leachman. I forget it was a. I forget the movie, but he played. It was about where she was a Nazi, Cloris Leachman. It was one
Yeah,
of
I
those.
can't. Yep.
One of those. Yeah. So,
So no, so many movies. Are you a Netflix guy or do you?
yeah, yeah.
What are you watching right
I
now?
have Netflix. I have everything. You know, I last night it was early, fairly early. It was like 9 o'clock, and I have my I don't know whether you knew. Well, we don't have to say this, but my wife, the one you met, passed away a few years ago.
I do. Sorry
Yeah,
about
you did. Well, I have a girlfriend anyway. After now, and she was sleeping. I was trying to find something. I said, I have 750 channels here, and there's nothing I want to watch. There's got to be something. I've seen every Seinfeld 18 times, so and I just wanted something to go to sleep. So I got on Netflix and watched something for a little while.
Do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm and shows like that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love Curb Your Enthusiasm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like, especially if you're trying to go to sleep. I want to go. I don't want to be watching, some horror movie or death thing.
Note to production companies out there: Michael Preece is looking for content to watch. You can't find it on 795 channels. Yeah, that's awesome.
There's got to be something I want to watch.
There's got to be something. Yeah. Hey, Michael. Thank you so much for today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you've grown up real well, Sam.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Let's keep in touch. Let's go do a Western.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, take care. All right, later. Bye.